And welcome to the K-Files. Well, we've got three of us this morning. So glad to have our guest this morning, and I'm going to let JP introduce. This is JP's guest, so I'm going to let him introduce him.
With us this morning, we've got a very good friend of mine. We worked together for years, retired First Sergeant Jimmie Silver. We worked together on the patrol for forever and a day. I know you are from up around in the Halifax community. We had talked about a case last week, the Susan Sharon Cleary case. We had talked about it on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
You had some additional information that you kind of wanted to come on and share with the public, things like that. And we greatly appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much, JP. As you know, since being retired, I looked at running for sheriff back 4 years ago in Halifax County, but since that time I came well grounded back in the community. And I went to a prayer vigil, and we'll get into that a little bit later, for Susan, not realizing Susan's brother was a retired trooper that I knew.
Her brother.
Her brother, that's
Okay.
right. I knew her brother Mike Sharon, and he's never discussed this, but I guess it's something you don't discuss too much, and it's
Right.
kind of surprising. So that sparked my interest a little bit, and I start digging into this case. And man, after you go with what you got, and we'll talk about it, there's going to be some facts, and I'm just going to say this up front to get people's suspicion and everything. This case points to one person. Nearly everybody else could have been involved with this case is deceased, and I agree with her uncle, Sammy. That one person still living and need to be held accountable for this crime.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's do. I'm going to jump in the book, kind of refresh everyone's mind and memory with what we have here to share with the public, and then we'll just kind of turn it over to you and converse and things like that. How about that?
That sounds great.
Okay, today's case, again, we talked about it last week, Susan Sharon Cleary. This case dates back to May 16th, 1983. 20-year-old and pregnant, she was found dead in her bed in the middle of the day, nude, with two unfired guns nearby. An autopsy determined that the cause of death was asphyxiation due to strangulation. Cleary was found dead in her own bed by her father after she didn't show up for work. A bra was wrapped around her nude body, but it wasn't used to kill her, and she had not been sexually assaulted, according to investigators. Her temple was bruised. Again, there were two guns placed on top of the dressers, and previous they had been hidden. Neither had been fired. The bed was moved out of place. A footstool, a rather large one, was moved out of its place. Additionally, there was a guard dog. The dog was known to be excessively loud and aggressive if anything out of the ordinary happened. The dog didn't bark that morning. Her mother, Maurice Sharon, worked in an insurance office and was expecting to see her daughter at an appointment with a realtor who worked in her office. When she missed her appointment, her parents called her job, and they said that she hadn't shown up for work that day. Susan Sharon Cleary had already named her baby Chad Ray Cleary, and he lies beside his mom in their final resting place. I stumbled upon a Facebook page that's dedicated to her for anyone who wants to kind of find this. It's called Who Murdered Susan Cleary? Susan, SUSANCLARY. Who Murdered Susan Cleary? A lot of interesting information on this as well from what I've read this past week. So let's talk about it.
Okay, just to give you a little setting in the background, this case really means something to me, more so now than ever after finding out her brother, Mike Sharon, was a state trooper, retired. He was a young man when this happened. Mike was roughly 23 years old, just had got on highway patrol station down, I believe, in New Haven, and when he got the call. But let's talk about the facts of this case. Susan was murdered that morning. She had a lot going for her. We want to talk about a little bit. She was a person, just not a number. So many times we get old, cold cases. People look at a number and they look at clearing a case. This ain't about clearing a case or a number. This is about a murder of a woman, soon-to-be mother, 8-month-old child. Her mother, which would have been the child's grandmother and father, were sighted. Never had those grandkids. That chance was taken and stuff from them. So let's talk about what I've learned since then. On May the 16th, she was 8 months pregnant. Lived at 937 Washington Avenue in Weldon. She was found by her father. Can you imagine a father walking in the house, finding his daughter nude with a bra seeming to be tied around her neck?
That
So
had to be
that makes you know it
awful.
was staged.
Yes, with a bra around her neck. Speculation the bra was not used as a weapon
Yeah.
at the time, but later determined from the autopsy report that she was basically strangled to death. Her father was called there to check on her after she did not report to work. Susan had things going for her. She had just got a job as Weldon tax collector. You know, back in that time, that was a pretty good job and stuff. A young person that was 20 years old. She had also had, and we'll talk about it a little bit more, at that age she was married, 8 months pregnant, and had already completed a 2-year degree. That was a lot to think about it. So,
Something that I've thought about over the past week is, you know, for somebody to have taken the time to search out, find guns, stage it, move furniture, stage it, tie things around her neck that played no role in her murder. Okay, they knew they had plenty of time. They knew that someone wasn't going to be coming to the house. They weren't worried that someone had seen them at the house. They had peace about them knowing that they weren't going to be bothered doing what they were doing.
I agree. Well, Jimmy, you know, JP and I talked about this last week. The dogs did not bark. The dog did not bark.
yes.
That dog knew that person.
And knew them well.
Yes. And as I look in the camera, I'm saying to you this morning, I believe the person, the murderer, yes, I'm saying is still alive, still in this area, has had a chance to clear himself on many occasions, has taken a polygraph. One of them he failed, one he says he's passed, but he put some strict restrictions on it. So I'm saying to you, she's gone, the family's gone. There's one uncle, Sammy, is asking for justice. He said he's willing to forgive and ask for mercy in the court for you. I think it's time you do the right thing. So, yes, I'm looking at you and speaking to you directly. But let's go on a little bit further in this case.
But Jimmy, can I ask one more
Yes.
question? Why do we not hear anything about her husband in this case?
Let me get into this. Is what we're going to dive in.
Okay.
That was a strange murder for two reasons. In the room, like I say, found 2 firearms found next to her. They were actually wiped clean of fingerprints. It's most likely, if this was a robbery or something, the weapons would have been taken.
They wouldn't have hung around this long.
Right.
Yep, hung around. Another thing, those dogs were known to bark and stuff. Her husband left about 7:45 going to visit his father's house, short drive away. If he left at that time, if anybody else came up, even if he was there not in the yard, those dogs were known to bark. It was a Doberman Pinscher. And
A
so,
Doberman.
Yes.
Yeah.
another interesting fact, her husband, Tim Clary, stated he last seen her that morning around 7:40 when he went to visit his dad. Another interesting fact, that she had a Siberian puppy in the house. The Doberman Pinscher, again, was tied in the backyard. Known to bark, raise Cain by the neighbors. Even when law enforcement responded that day, as they went in and out of the scene and cars came up, the dog would bark.
And
so,
there you go.
yes. And it has not been clear. The husband came later to the scene. Just rumor talk. Some said that's one time the dog did not bark. So if all the activity there was making the dog bark, you know, if he comes up, seem like with somebody, the dog would bark again. But that's speculation. And
I mean, do you have dogs?
yes,
I mean, I've got dogs.
Yeah.
My dogs don't bark at me when I come home.
Yeah.
You know, and other people's may. But now, if you came to my house today, brother, you would think they were going to eat you alive.
yeah, and And that's the way most dogs are, protective of the owner and stuff.
Well, let's do this. Let's take a minute. Let's take a break, pay some bills, and we'll be right back. How about that?
All
Stay
right.
tuned, folks. And welcome back. Again this morning, Miss Sandra, myself, and Jimmie Silver, retired first sergeant with the Highway Patrol, a very good friend of mine from up in the Halifax community, talking about a cold case involving Susan Sharon Cleary. We kind of touched base with what we had here to share with the public, and he's come in to kind of, he's friends with the family, he's friends with the uncle, and he's kind of given us a little more detail and backstory here.
A very intriguing
very.
case.
Yeah. They say, I know the uncle I was friends with, later found out to be friends with her brother was a retired trooper, and it was, to my amazement,
I don't remember him, but I never worked up in Granville, Vance,
Yeah.
Warren County area.
yeah, he worked what we call C4 back then and stuff, and it's amazing. I never knew that. He came to one of my cousin's funeral, even actually came to my mother's funeral right before he retired and stuff. And I never knew that. It was quite surprising that was his sister. But this case has been kept alive. 2011, Debbie Ariel did a piece on it. 2017, NBC did a piece, happened to be 1717. The local newspaper, every 4 or 5 years, has pretty much ran the story on it. The case was reopened in 2008 with Major Bruce Temple, who recently retired. But his main belief was the perpetrator wanted it to appear as a robbery, that it was staged. And if I read, and I later saw why he said that, because there was some money in a jar there. There were 2 weapons in the room. Actually, there was one near her body. There was jewelry, stuff of value that was there that was not taken. There was no forced entry in the house. None so whatsoever, no forced entry.
There should have either been excessive robbery or sexual assault that took place.
No,
Well, if they were setting it up for that, they did not do a good job.
No,
Not at all.
somebody here was panicking.
the only thing that indicated might have been sexual assault at first was being nude with the bra around her neck. But as she was sent to the medical examiner, there was determined there was no sexual assault, bruising anywhere down, the regular testing. There was nothing that indicated sexual assault. So that was definitely ruled out. No forced entry. This case has been passed on, another problem has been passed on from investigator to investigator. One thing, though, that was noted that caught me, Chuck Ward was one of the first investigators, him, the Bruce Temples, and others that passed. They all believe one thing, that it was staged, and this was not a planned homicide. Was not a planned homicide. And I'm speaking right now again to that suspect that knows this was not planned. Nobody will think you went to kill Susan that day. It was from an incident that happened. That's why I feel that you need to come speak now, free yourself, and make things right with your good Lord, because one day you're going to be held accountable. So again, I'm speaking to you. And I just wanted to look at something else. Again, even the pathologist report said that he speculated it could have been spontaneous, and we're going to get it more.
I can see that.
Yeah. Her mother said in an interview, not knowing who or why leaves an empty spot that can never be filled. That was the words of her mother, Maurice Sharon. That spot can never be filled. We were hoping and thinking that she would get justice before she passed. She was last to pass. And let's recap, the case is more than an unsolved crime or murder case. It's about justice for a young lady that was just beginning to live her life. She had already completed a 2-year degree at age 20. She was 8 months pregnant. She had a husband. They were standing, had their own house. They were self-sufficient. Her husband had a good job at Champion. At that time, Champion was known as a good place to work. Champion International paper. Like I said, getting really a good job for her age. And she was a tax collector for the town of Weldon. She was the daughter of Maurice and Herman Sharon, a sister to Trooper Mike Sharon. She was a wife, married to Timmy Clary, employed again at Champion International. This is where things get a little bit interesting. Her father was well respected, a school board member. Again, as a teenager, she worked for a local restaurant, Taylor's Fish House. She had worked for there nearly 6 years. She was 20, so that means she worked for 14 years. Nothing but great words. This girl believed in working, going to school, getting an education. She believed in doing
Sounds like
things
she had a
right.
good work ethic.
Yes. She
Yeah.
was well respected and lived, by it and liked in the community. The sheriff at the time was Bill Bell. 2 weeks after the murder, the town of Weldon offered a $1,000 reward. This is back in 1983. Following that, Governor Hunt authorized $5,000. From the local community, they had $7,456. Sounds like a little money nowadays. I wouldn't mind having it if I could get it. But actually, I looked it up yesterday. That's roughly $25,000. That was a lot of money back in 1983 to be thrown at this case.
Do you know if the governor's reward is still available? I would assume so.
Yeah, I would assume so, and it's something be glad to follow up on if you'd
Okay.
like to. And so, but I do know there's reward money out there. So if someone knows something about Susan, please come forward. Don't let the money stop you. Let you get your conscience clear.
And Team Cold Case has a total of $15,000 in the pot right now. You can collect up to $15,000 cash. Cash money, Jimmy, within 2 days.
I'll make a challenge. If someone come forward with this case and help us out to make this case close near this anniversary of her murder this year, I would personally put $1,000 in that of my money. If you would do that, please, if you know something, it's worth it to me to bring closure for our brother trooper, Mike Sherman. So this is personal a little bit with him being a brother trooper that never got to see that justice. He was working in Bellhaven that day, I believe it was, got the call, got there to find his sisters there, dead, deceased. In a recent article, her childhood friend, Lynette Early White, still occasionally visit her graves, occasionally places pink roses at Susan's grave because that was her favorite color. Susan is gone. The baby never had a chance, but she has not been forgotten. Flowers are still placed at her grave several times a year. That speaks that these people want closure and justice. As you can see, there are those pink roses. People still love her, miss her. This community deserves closure.
And you can see the baby's name right there on the tombstone.
Chad Ray. Chad Ray. Her Uncle Samuel recently stated in Daily Herald article, only one person is alive now that I believe could have did it. Only one person.
That picture that was just shown of the grave marker, is there any way you can pull that back up? Is that a Doberman
Yes, it is.
over Timothy Ray's picture?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the husband?
Yes, but he's not deceased yet.
Okay, but what I'm saying is the dog probably was his dog.
Yes,
And that's just something that jumped out at me
That's
right now.
interesting.
And the
Yeah.
barrel of the babies.
Yeah, gotcha.
And the dog
Okay.
didn't bark.
The dog didn't bark and was known to bark, and law enforcement showed up, barkers. They went in and out, but
Right.
when that
You know,
perpetrator suspect went in and out, the dog barked.
Gotcha.
But her mother was brought to the scene by the town clerk in Weldon. When they pulled up to the scene, this is another tragedy. As they pulled up, she didn't quite know what was going on. Knew something was wrong. She saw the stretcher coming out, but as the stretcher was coming out of the house, I believe going down the stairs, Susan's arm fell out from under the sheet, and she could see her daughter's arm. At that point, she knew her daughter was gone.
Lifeless.
She knew her grandson was gone. She knew her world was forever changed at that moment. The last time Susan spoke with her mother was less than 12 hours before that. Susan asked her mother, said, "Do you think I'm going to have a pretty baby, a pretty child?"
Wow.
All of that was gone. The whole family was excited, anticipating this child. And folks, we need justice for that child. If that child was living,
Absolutely.
be 40 years old this past year.
Jimmy, who can they call if we get someone out there, if someone knows about this, knows anything, slightest little tip, who should they call?
They should call Crime Stoppers, Halifax County Crime Stoppers, or they could call you guys Cold Case.
Yes, they can
Yes.
call the 406. If we can put up the number, there's Halifax County Crime Stoppers right there.
Call Halifax Crime Stoppers, call Cold Case, and I'm retired, but I still have connections and people in the game. Call me, because I have to be honest, I've heard of people being fearful about talking to
Yeah.
law enforcement. Talk to me, and I will make sure your information get where it needs to be. If you don't feel comfortable sharing it with Halifax County Crime Stoppers, we can reach out partners in SBI. We will get it out there. If it's to the media, we will get the information where it needs to be.
And it will be kept anonymous.
Anonymous again. So we will keep it, we will protect you. Some people don't feel protected when they call and give up information.
Mhm.
And being
That's
honest,
right.
as a retiree, I now understand
Yeah,
that.
I do too.
So I would never ask anyone to jeopardize their safety, but I will ask you to help bring justice in this case. Her brother was an NC trooper at the time. That article in Roanoke Rapids by Roger Bell in 2010 stated that Chuck Ward was the lead investigator, and he told Trooper Sharon that the scene looked like it was staged. Ward said in one article, so the old said that the old weapons were not, their weapons were not taken. Money was in a half-filled jar, not taken. There was jewelry in plain sight, not taken. Nothing leading him to believe there was a struggle. That means that Susan had to know that perpetrator for it not to be a struggle. She trusted that person not to fight back. A pregnant mother will fight for herself, but also that close to having that baby, she knew she was be struggling for saving her baby's life.
And a crook, or any crook or criminal would have left there with guns and jewelry. And they would have.
Yeah,
used or not.
absolutely.
Well, Jenny,
Absolutely.
we're gonna take a break, pay some bills, maybe do some weather, but we'll be right back right after this.
Okay.
And welcome back. Again, our guest this morning is retired First Sergeant Jimmie Silver, good friend of mine. We went to BLET together, went to patrol school together, and he's in here discussing a cold case out of Halifax County, Susan Sharon Cleary. I mean, her brother's a former trooper. You're friends with the uncle. And,
know a lot of the family, met some of her childhood friends and stuff.
So let's pick up where we were at.
Yeah, and we have a Pastor Cowell up there at Weldon Church. He's been praying about this, and I believe in God as he do. And Pastor Cowell speaks out to that person. He's been speaking just like I am looking this morning in the camera, saying, if you know, son, help us. And the suspect, the perpetrator's looking in this camera, Pastor Cowell, I want you to know, God will forgive you for what you've done. The family will give mercy on the court. They just want this thing resolved. They're not so much caring if someone spend the rest of their life in jail. They don't care if the person go to jail. They just want closure to this case for the surviving family and the community. So that's what we're looking. We're looking for justice. We're not looking for a life sentence, death sentence. What we're looking for is closure for that remaining family, because we're going to talk about it in a minute. We believe this was a murder, but we don't believe it was an intended murder. It was an accident. Things may have went too far.
Crime of passion.
Yeah.
So then, if you think it was a crime of passion, then the things that were moved around in the room that appear to me not to be a robbery were done after the fact?
I would think.
That's going to play a part. If in fact what we're speculating is true, that would come. That's not good that they took the time to do that.
Because if they
That
didn't
means
mean
they
to do it, they didn't
recognized-
know they were going to do it, then they wouldn't have moved things around, right?
After the fact, they recognized they shouldn't have done what they did.
I'm just.
And
So then things were moved around.
Yeah, I'm going to speak to you
Okay.
as prior to a lot of people. I was a Rocky Mountain police officer. My first day there, had a attempted suicide. First day out of field training on my own. First call basically was a murder call, but did a lot of break-ins. And with break-ins, a lot of times when it was about insurance, people would move stuff around. People have a hard time breaking their own stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have a hard time breaking it when you got insurance with a deductible or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
People just have a tendency doing a fake, stage break-in to take what they want to take to get that claim, but not damage anything else. But this in case, it wasn't for the insurance. It still appears to be staged because stuff was moved around instead of broken.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm going to move stuff around in the passion of a crime, and I don't know this house, most likely I'm going to break a lamp, I'm going to sling it.
That's right.
I'm going to get in and get out. This means this perpetrator,
Exactly.
suspect, knew they had
They
time
took
on
care.
their side.
Right.
They knew when nobody going to be checking on her for the next hour or two,
Mm-hmm.
because he knew who's supposed to be in the house, the perpetrator. Again, let's talk about what the pathologists report. They stated, and also this comes from the investigators, and also was given to the media, said that there was a lot of pressure applied to her neck because she was pregnant. You imagine she was pregnant, and in certain positions when you fold over, your airway is already restricted. There was a bruise on her temple, not a bad bruise from my understanding, but bruise on her temple. Her chest only had minor bruising that would be consistent with someone placing a knee possibly in the chest, or he said pathologist report, again a forearm, but not a lot of pressure because there was not much bruising. To me, my theory, this is my theory, it's about like everybody else's theories, it's not not worth a lot, but speaking to the perpetrator now, he knows this. He could have been applying pressure in an argument or the heat of the moment, not meaning to kill her or his unborn child, and it happens because stuff happens. I always say, bad stuff happen to good people. Good people get pushed too far and make a mistake. What needs to be done now is for that person to come on that mistake. Whoever you are, come on that mistake. Again, this report, even Investigator Ward, the original investigator, history was this was a incident and an accident. He does not believe it was staged murder. That was from the first investigator. It's been passed off to at least 3 people. Bruce Temple, one of the last investigators, he had the same theory and thought that it was accidental, that it might have been an incident that went too far, and that's leading to that makes me think it could have been a argument with, yes, I say it, people afraid to say it, possibly her husband or someone extremely close, because there was no forced entry, there was no struggle, and if anybody else had broken that house, I believe that mother would have fought them, would have had some fibers or something on her body. There would have
Under
been
her
some
fingernails.
fingernails.
Evidence of scratching.
Yes.
Defensive.
The house would
wounds.
have had something broken instead of being moved around and stuff. And I also just talk real quickly. The husband, Timmy, was given a polygraph in Greenville following the murder, but he was so upset, they said they was unable to read it. So later he was taken to Raleigh to take a polygraph. During that polygraph, he gave restriction requirements that they had to read the results back to him, and I'm assuming as it went, and this one he stated that he passed the test. I hadn't found anything in any of my research where actually anyone besides him says he passed the test, but he said he passed the test there. Again, just capping off everything, retired investigator Bruce Temple, in his last interview about this case, is that he regret the fact Tim Clary, his words, failed to fully cooperate.
Gotcha.
Tim Clary, they're saying you failed to fully cooperate. If you didn't know it, do it. If you know something about it, Tim, please speak out and help these investigators. And if you was a mistake on your part, please speak out and tell someone happened. I understand now they have a new detective, Rich Simayo, if I'm saying it right, Simogyi, with Halifax County Sheriff Department, is looking into cold cases. Just want to say real quick again to the people, if the murder was did in a moment of passion or accident, just own it. Ask the courts for mercy. The last article written this year by the Daily Herald reached out to Susan's husband, Terry Clary, again, this year. He was reached out to in 2011, as you can see, for nearly 12 years and numerous times, asking for a statement for him to tell his side of the story. And he has no response or does not respond. To me, it looks like there could be some involvement on her husband, Tim Clary, and I hope I'm wrong, and I hope that he's looking at this as some of his family and makes me wrong, and we can clear this case and know that Tim didn't have anything to do with it. But if he did, I can just tell you this, as a Christian law enforcement officer knowing the court system, God can forgive you if you ask to be forgiven. Also, the court system may have mercy on you if this incident happened, as they speculate, as an accident. I'm calling on you or someone that knows something, family members, to clear this thing, because as family members, you know about this murder and you stood silent all these years. You bear some responsibilities, and you're going to have to answer for that one day, if not here in the court system with your maker. Thank you, and everybody, please call in, follow this case, and let's get justice.
Jimmie, thank you so much
Absolutely.
for coming in.
Absolutely.
I know you've got another case on another lot of backstory to a case that we've talked about, Jaleesa Reynolds, and we'll just have to schedule.
We want to have you back again.
on.
Yes.
But thank you so much for coming in and sharing with us what you have on that.
Thank you guys for wanting justice for Halifax County. We want a safer county, better county,
Yes.
and it starts with closing these old cases and moving on. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. Thank you, JP.
Yes, ma'am.
And we'll see you next week.